So because this is our new table and we are creating this and we want to insert the data, I'll go ahead with insert option. Okay. And we have seen everything is looking good. And we also want to add a commit component. So let me go ahead and add MySQL commit. Well, it would be DB connection 1. Now I would say on component. Let's run this job and come back, and then I'll explain what is the difference of this trigger error, run if, and then all these things. Why do we want to go with on component? Okay, here. Everything looks good for us. Yes, let's go ahead and run this job. And yeah, that's completed successfully. Let's go ahead and do a select. Select star from PMP underscore VP. Yes, there it is. We have the table created and we have the records inserted into the table. We have our employee ID starting from 123 to 126, and we have the corresponding departments updated or departments added to the employee department table. We can quickly do a comparison of the data also. It's the same. Okay, it's 123 belongs to the IT and 124 to HR and 125 to the IT again and 126 to the operations. All right, so we see that by this job, we were able to create a table and then insert values in the table. All we have to do is to pass the input data. So input can be a text file, or it can be a CSV file, or it can be another table, whatever is the form of input that you have. Pass the input and then use the output component of the MySQL or whatever the database is. Connect those and then do a commit. Insert this would specify the action that we want to do on the table and specify the action that you want to do on data, and then go ahead and commit that. I think this is pretty much straightforward. In our next examples, we will go ahead and try working with different columns, and then we will see how can we join this data and how can we filter the data and do some other part of data operations, and let's see how can we implement them using those Talend job. Okay, now as I said, I would explain on what is the difference of these things. Let me first delete this. Here, when you go ahead and right click this, you find options like row and then trigger. So if I say row main and then run this, what this would happen is when we are doing a T file input delimited read, and when there is a row link or the link connection that it is there between these two components, the data is read one after the other. So because it is a row, each row is read one after the other. So what happens now? Let's assume it like this. First, this record is read. That is nothing but the 123 and which belong, the department is IT. This record is read and then it is passed to this component. So what does this component do? This component would have already created a table because this is the first table and we are creating this. So it would first create the table and then run the insert query. So now the insert query is successfully run. So what happens next? Because we have a row here, this would go ahead and call this. Okay, now I come back here. What does this do? This would do the commit on the table. So at this stage of the first iteration or after the first row is read, we would have the table created and one row, that is the first row that is inserted in the department table, and the commit has happened. Here we have a close connection option. Because this connection is checked, what this would do? Whatever the connection that we have specified here in this component list. So that's nothing but this connection. This is a MySQL connection that we have passed. This would go ahead and close this connection rather than having the connection open. It's always advisable to close a connection when we are done with writing. So that's a generic rule that we follow. So this would go ahead and close this connection. So what happens next? Now again it comes back to this and then reads the second row. That is nothing but the 124. And again it would pass to this one. Here this has to insert the record to the department table. But the catch here is this also uses MySQL connection. So nothing but this one. But this was already closed during the commit of the previous record. And we would come having an error saying that the output component does not allow on a closed connection. There is no open connection that it is there. To avoid that issue, what we would do is we would go ahead and say do this only on component OK. That means do not execute this component after the intermediary results or the intermediary output or the intermediary completion. Only when you have read all the records that are there in the input file and only when you have inserted all the records that are coming from the input file, then this component is treated as successfully completion. To do that check and after that successful completion, we want to commit this. We use this link called onComponent. So what this would do, it would read the first record, insert it, read the second, insert it, read the third, insert it, and then read the fourth, insert it, finish the component. This component is successfully completed. So this comes to this, and then this would commit the transactions or commit the inserts in the table and then commit the database state, and then it would go ahead and close the connection that we established for writing the data to the MySQL database table. I think this is the good start for working with databases and understanding how can we read, write, and do various other operations. In our next examples, we would see how can we filter the data, how can we join the data and get the results, and we will also try an example of writing the data to a output file by reading the return data to the table. Yes, as always, try these examples in your local machines, in your local studio. That would give you a very good edge when you're trying to work it in a real-time scenarios.